Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Eric and I am joined today by my wife Megan. She is here to give her perspective on what it was like being my wife during my stint having long COVID and all the hellish things that we went through together. Because I've had a lot of people asking for her perspective or what your spouse or partner can do during this time. So she is here to kind of give her 2 cents on that, which leads me into my next point. Anything you hear today in this video, make sure that you run it by your doctor. This is just our experiences. It's not, medical advice or anything like that. So, but we do have a few questions from YouTube and we're gonna jump right into those. So one of the first questions I have here is, how does your wife give you hope when the situation seems hopeless?
Yeah, that really reminds me a lot of the mental struggle for you when you were in the worst of it. And it's one of those things where, especially for you, this was the worst experience of your life. And now it's not the same for everybody else, but mentally this is the hardest thing I think I've ever seen you go through. And honestly, as someone who struggles with mental health herself, it's one of those things where it is very annoying when somebody says, oh, it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll go away, don't worry, cheer up. Nobody really understands it unless they've been through it, in my opinion. So I just kind of knew how deep and dark it was for you at times, and it was just something that I didn't want to tell you it was going to go away or it was going to get better, but I feel like just being there for you and helping you through just every single day by your side, fighting it with you, was the best that I could do. Because you didn't want to hear it's going to get better, it's going to go away. Because in that moment, you don't want to think about 6 months ahead. You just want to try to get through that day.
Yeah, that's big. I remember saying to you, this was very early on. I remember saying to you, I can't do this for another year.
Oh, no, yeah.
And here we are 3 years later.
3 years later.
And it took way longer than a year.
It did. And, it's just one of those things where, you can... It's like scaling a mountain. It's so big to get over, but you just have to focus on every single step, just step at a time.
Yeah.
That's how you get through things, and that's how I look at it with anxiety and depression. You can't look at the big scheme of things, which sounds so weird to say that out loud, but truly it is just a day by day, being there for each other.
Taking it one day at a time.
Literally one day at a time, because sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah. I remember my strength obviously came from making sure that I was going to be around to be there for you, because it's my nature to take care of you.
Right.
And when the roles are reversed, and you definitely take care of me even before this and after this, that's not what I'm saying, but when it's completely reliant and it's not so much of a back and forth, relying on each other, it's just me purely relying on you. One, it's kind of a pride hit, but it's also just so difficult to let your spouse do all these things for you. You feel bad.
Well, and especially in a relationship like ours, a lot of it is 50-50. We split a lot of everything that we do. We're not,
Gender roles.
Gender roles, yeah, that's what I was.
We don't really have gender roles.
No.
That's just our dynamic, but.
It's just kind of how we work. It's how we've always worked. So, when I kind of was put into that gender role, the wife takes care of everything, and I didn't have the help that I normally do. Don't get me wrong, I hate dishes and laundry in general, but when when your spouse is bedridden, and not only are you trying to take care of your spouse, but you're trying to take care of the house, and I highly do not recommend getting a new puppy during this. Very bad idea. But I guess being placed in that gender role, not because you put me there, but just surely out of survival, because I had to. I had to do everything because you were so sick. And, honestly, I don't even remember what the question was.
That's okay. How'd you give me hope?
How did I give you hope? I tried to take the load off of you.
Yeah.
Truly. You had to worry so much about your own health and just making it day by day that I took on everything else so that you didn't have to worry about other things like taking care of the house or taking care of the dogs or mowing the grass or any of that normal day-to-day stressors that most people have. So I really just tried to make it as comfortable for you as I could.
So flipping that, how was all that extra work, not even in relation to myself and helping me get through it, but what kind of, mental load and physical load, emotional load did that put on you, the spouse? Because I know there's a lot of people out there who, spouses just, this puts a huge strain on relationships.
It really does.
So what can you say to that point?
And obviously I know that not everybody's relationship is the same. And of course, like he said, this is just purely my experience. It sucked. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm probably gonna cry.
It's okay.
Oh, I don't like that.
It's hard.
Yeah. I didn't think I would cry. It was the worst because I need to take a minute.
Being the one to take on all those extra roles, all that extra housework, and maybe not in your situation, we don't have kids, but
Right.
how did that affect you mentally, physically, emotionally, outside of taking care of me?
You know, and honestly, thank God we didn't have a kid because I can't imagine being the spouse to not only take care of all of that, but add kids into the mix. Like, truly, we didn't have it nearly as bad. We truly didn't, you know, because your life just doesn't stop during all this. People still have jobs and kids and sports and everything. So, I am thankful for the fact that we weren't in that position like other people are. And luckily, as a spouse, my main love language is acts of service. So there for a while, I think I was fine because I like taking care of people. You know, I like doing things for them. I like making sure, I take the load off you normally. But I think after a while, it truly, I didn't realize how much it truly affected me until I basically just had a little bit of a mental breakdown. Outside of that, there were other things going on for sure, but I think it was just the combination of everything at the time.
It was a rough time of life.
It was a rough time of life. I'm not gonna lie. It was.
No, we were all locked down. I had this during lockdown.
Yeah, it was. The world was falling apart, is what it felt like. I was grieving the loss of my grandma. I was grieving the loss of our life that we had. We were in our late 20s. We were enjoying friends and hanging out and just being late 20s dinks, dual income, no kids. We were enjoying our life, and everything came to a screeching halt, and then it just got worse from there. So it was a very hard time in our life, but at the same time, it was harder for you. And I also felt like, who was I to complain because I wasn't physically sick?
You weren't physically feeling it.
I wasn't physically feeling what you had, thank God. The whole COVID thing, we did the 2 weeks, and I truly felt like I bounced back much faster. Luckily, I wasn't sick, and so I was just really trying to take on that role as best as I could. So I think mentally, I just went into survival mode.
I think that's a good description of the whole couple years is survival mode.
It's really all it has been, and it was
not so much anymore.
No, not so much anymore.
Because I've been a lot better for so long
honestly,
now.
the last 6 to 8 months, it's been year really. I guess time just flies when I'm old.
Yeah.
But no, and I hate to say go into survival mode and don't think about it. But to be perfectly honest with you, I think that was the only thing that got me through it, was to not think about it.
I would say...
But that doesn't end well mentally, just letting you know.
I get the question a lot, what is something important to do to help bring yourself one step closer to recovery. And this is such a physical illness. It is not in your head. It is not made up. That is so important to understand. Just because doctors can't run a test and confirm this does not mean it's not real. That just means they don't have the right tests yet.
Well, and this is something that's so new. The technology and the research behind it is developing literally as we're sick.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and especially for back when I was really sick, no one knew anything. This was 2020, 2021. But part of what I really recommend is people make sure you get some things correct. Get your nutrition correct, get your habits correct, get your mind correct, as far as like making sure you're in a mental state to heal and letting your body do the healing.
Yes.
And there's other videos I've had on a lot of that.
Yes.
But once you're there, make that your default and distract yourself. So you're not constantly thinking of your situation, your symptoms. You know, if you can handle or stand reading a book, if you're visually not stimulated to the point where you can't watch TV, just binge all of Netflix.
We did that a lot.
So like, like games or if you can handle social interactions, whatever you can handle, do anything to distract yourself from the situation you're in. Because if you stew on it, if you are constantly thinking on it, and this is a mistake I made, especially early on, if you're constantly thinking of, I'm in this predicament, it's not aiding yourself in being in a situation or a state for your body to heal.
Exactly.
And I would say that is applicable to the spouse as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's things you need to take care of. Unfortunately, your spouse who's sick cannot.
Right.
Or maybe they can't do some of the things they used to. But
I just didn't want you to, honestly.
Yeah.
I know that sounds bad. Not that you can't load a dishwasher or do laundry, but
at some point I couldn't.
at some point you couldn't. And
as silly as that sounds.
you know, this reminds me of one of the points that I was thinking of. Sometimes I had to be a little mean. And not in the way of like, I'm bullying you, but in the way of, I need you to sit down.
Because I would try. I would still try and push myself even when it wasn't.
And then that would just make you
happen.
10 times worse, and that would put you 3 steps behind. And sometimes I had to be a little mean and tell you, just sit the heck down. Stop trying to do all this. I can do it. It's fine.
I've said this before, but I had to be selfish.
Yeah.
And prioritize my healing over responsibilities that I really needed to take care of. But you can make up for that. Like, and I try every day to make up for.
You do great.
You did so much for me, and I'm so appreciative of it. But you can make up for that.
Yeah.
But really spend the time and not spend the energy to get better to where you can pick up those roles again.
I will also say it's one of those things that I think the spouses need to communicate on, because for the longest time I just grinned and bear it. I don't know how you.
You gritted your teeth and went through it?
I did, yeah, there. Much better of an explanation, but yes.
Yeah.
And I think that also is just a personality thing too. Personally, I would rather just shoulder all the responsibilities and not really talk about it, but that's just my own self. But I truly think that, like I said, it's one of those things where who am I to say this is the worst because I'm not physically going through what you're going through. So I felt guilty bringing it up. But I think,
it's hard for
but it is
the spouse.
hard. It is hard for the spouse. You know, you're thrown into a situation that you've never been into, and I think that truly communicating about it is something that needs to happen, because as the spouse of someone with long COVID, there is a very heavy underlying feeling of resentment. And that's definitely something that I struggled with a lot, because it was one of those things where at the time, I felt like I didn't have the space to grieve or process things that I needed to, because I'm gonna cry again, because I was so busy focusing on you. And that's resentment that I didn't want to feel, because how could I resent you for something you couldn't control?
But it's understandable.
But it's there. It's so there.
It's
and
understandable.
It's such a heavy feeling because you were being selfish and I was put on the back burner. But at the same time, it kind of needed to happen.
Because now we can look back and I am, you know, I'm no athletic star of physical shape, but I'm pretty much in the same position physical shape I was before.
Right.
You know, round, but that's okay.
But it needed.
Mood, so.
I know it needed to happen, and I think that that's one of the things where the resentment and the guilt didn't get talked about, and it needs to, because I feel like if couples aren't as strong as we are and have that solid foundation, I feel like that resentment and that guilt is what leads to relationships breaking up.
And they have, and hopefully something we say here can help that not happen.
Yeah.
Because there is an end in sight. I mean, that was probably, I'd say, top 3 hardest things about the whole deal is we didn't have an end in sight. We didn't know I was ever going to get better. And you look up things like, you know, ME/CFS or chronic fatigue syndrome, which is pretty much what long COVID is, and it doesn't look good because you look at Google and it says it's uncurable, it's a lifelong disease. It does not have to be.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And I didn't want to live like that forever.
Right.
You didn't want to live like that forever, and I think that's probably where people are going, okay, well, if it's going to be like this forever, then I'm out.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, it truly did test us the most.
For sure.
Multiple times, the most we've ever been tested.
Hardest thing I've ever gone through in many ways.
Yeah.
But there's someone watching this who's looking at this and said, you know, who's struggling every minute of every day, and they're looking at me like, oh, I can't fathom myself ever recovering, because the way I feel now, the way I felt for X amount of months, years, days, whatever, I'm never going to get there. But I was in that same exact position, listening to someone else say what I just said. They said, I was struggling and I recovered, and I want to be that hope for someone else. But it's just like, if I could time travel and talk to myself again and say, you will get through this, it would make the whole process a whole lot better.
It really would.
So we got a couple different conversations going on at the moment.
True, but that's how I talk. But honestly, the same as a spouse. Like, I wish I could just time travel and tell myself it's not going to be like that forever.
It will.
Even though
it can get better.
It feels like it will be.
It can get better.
Yeah.
So.
Which is exactly what I said I didn't want to tell people, because I hate hearing that. You know, when you're in the worst of it, like I said, you don't want somebody saying, "Oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine." But it's truly how it is.
Knowing it does get better from someone who has gone through it means so much more than someone else who says, "Oh,
true.
Walk it off."
That is true. And honestly, a lot of people will tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, people don't understand. So I think it is important to hear it from someone who has gone through the struggle.
Right.
And it wasn't that long ago. And it's not like I'm just, you know, in a good phase. You know how long COVID kind of does that cyclical pattern where you feel better for a little bit and then you get worse? Mm-hmm. I've been better for a year.
Right.
Like, I'm better.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Life does change back.
I still don't want you to push it too hard, and that's another thing.
Well, that's just learning to live.
Right.
More, I don't want to say cautiously, but like,
I mean, a little bit. You know your limits now.
But at the same time, I am not limited by my body. I am putting those own limits
on yourself.
Mentally, physically, just to be healthier.
Well, and I think
I'm never thinking, oh, I think it's coming back.
No.
I'm going to relapse back. That's not what I'm saying.
Honestly, as a spouse, that's another thing you're going to have to learn. One, you have to learn
the up and down.
The up and down.
Yeah.
Because it does happen. You know, I remember we redid the bathroom and you were doing so great.
That was the first day I felt not just normal. I felt amazing that day.
But then after that, I was terrified.
I was like, I'm coming out of this.
You're coming out of it. You're on a good slope, and then it just went down from there. But, you know, it's one of those things as a spouse where your spouse will lie to you. but not in the way you think that they're lying about long COVID. Because
The one who's sick.
Yes, I apologize. The spouse that is sick with long COVID, they will lie to you, but not in the way of, oh, I'm so sick. Like, they're not faking it for the attention. As honestly, I kind of thought you were just like a man cold. I truly.
The man flu?
I thought you had the man flu, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, just. You're fine.
Get over it.
I literally thought get over it for, I'm not gonna lie, a handful of months. I truly didn't think it was anything that was bad. And once I finally realized what it was, I had to learn his limits because he would do the up and down, and I wouldn't want him to push it. But now we're on the opposite side of that, where you're trying to do all these things, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I think you need to cool it
because you're used to me.
Because I'm used to you getting sick, and that's where they'll lie to you. Because they'll be like, I'm fine, I can do this. And they're not gonna lie to you about being sick because this is something people don't fake. When you're why would you fake it?
Why would you fake this?
When you're that miserable, why would you fake it? They're not going to lie to you about being sick. They're not going to try and milk it. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. Just so that they don't have to do dishes or they don't have to do laundry. They're going to lie to you and say that they're fine to hide it.
We feel bad.
You did it all the time. And I hated it.
Where I tried to do something.
Yes, and I hated it.
And I've talked about the different phases of recovery, and I think that's an important thing to know where you are in recovery.
Yes.
But yeah, early on when you are not at the position to start pushing yourself, yeah, and before you learn not to do that, you're gonna keep trying to do these things that you really shouldn't.
Yeah.
The point is, the person who's sick is not lying to get attention. They're gonna lie to try and do more when they really shouldn't.
And obviously we can't speak for everybody. I'm sure there are those nasty people out there that do. But you know your spouse, you know their limits, you know them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I had to learn too. I had to kind of learn those little subtle body language changes where I could tell like that. You would breathe different when you weren't feeling good. And I don't think you picked up on it, but I picked up on it first and brought it up.
I feel fine right now.
Well, that's good. But just, you know your person, and you know how they feel, and you know when they're trying to hide something, just like when you know I'm trying to hide how I'm struggling, you know, when I'm hangry or tired. And I just think it's just one of those things that now that you're feeling better, I have to relearn to not stop you from doing things because it scares me.
Yeah. Because
it will send you right back into feeling like you're going to crash or it's going to come back. Like I have to stop being such a control freak.
Yeah.
You can absolutely do more dishes and laundry if you wanted to.
I think we're going to break this up into a couple videos.
Yeah.
Because this is going to start getting long.
True. And as somebody who literally doesn't like to watch long YouTube videos.
You don't like YouTube at all.
I know.
I'm
so sorry, Daddy YouTube. I'm sorry.
I would live on YouTube. But especially in the beginning, I'd be YouTubing or Googling or whatever. Long COVID cure.
I do have one more thing.
Every day.
I wanted to. Yeah. I want people to try everything. Because I know.
Try it? What do you mean?
Try everything in the sense of try everything to get better. If you have to change your diet, do it. If you have to cut out caffeine, do it. If you have to cut out Lucky Charms because they make you feel sick, do it. I had
Lucky Charms take me down. I had a bowl, and I was like, I was probably in stage 2.
2-ish. You still weren't great.
Yeah, but I was just like, oh, I can have some Lucky Charms. And the amount of sugar it put me down.
Like as a spouse, like I had to learn. Don't let you have caffeine. Don't let you have sugar. Like
I still don't drink caffeine.
Don't let you have alcohol.
See, that's one of the things that I put on my own self because I know you shouldn't be on caffeine anyway.
As I'm sitting here drinking coffee.
Well, but I get decaf coffee.
Yeah.
Because I still like the taste.
Well,
but that's what I mean when we were saying earlier the limits I put on myself. It's not because I have to. I probably could have caffeine now.
Yeah, but
But I don't.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't drink it. It's bad for you. It's bad for you. But yeah, it's just those little things. Like, try everything to get better because you don't know what's gonna work, and you don't know if it's gonna work if you don't do it. Like those videos you would pay for, or the programs that you tried, they were fantastic. But we would have never known if you didn't try it. You would never know if you don't go to the doctor. And sometimes you're gonna get really shitty doctors that don't believe you.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
That is a whole nother ball.
That's part of the whole point of this video, is the people who don't believe you. We hope we can reach out to maybe a spouse out there who just, doesn't believe this is real, and to reassure you, we have no alternative motive to make this video. It's just purely to hopefully convince you that this is real. Your loved one is suffering.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't I have less than 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel.
And I don't even watch YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It's not something that, like, I don't have these monetized. This isn't for monetary gain.
No.
This isn't for fame and fortune. Like, every time, we were just saying this before we started recording. Every time I get more subscribers, I'm like, oh, that's great. I can reach more people. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, that's more people hurting and suffering. Like, do I really want? I don't really want more subscribers.
Right. Because somebody's suffering.
But I want this information to be spread, and so we have no alternative motives to make this. This is real.
Well, and it's one of those things too that, and not to say this in a selfish way and take it away from those who are suffering with long COVID, but it's not just them. It's the whole circle that you're in. Your partner, your spouse, your kids, your family. Not saying that, like, we're suffering just as much as you are, because we're not, but we're suffering in different ways. And I think that's something that it's just one of those things where, like, we just kind of had to regroup and pull in and say what needs to be prioritized, and that was your health. I think something that I had to remind myself of is, as a spouse, if you think it's bad for you at that time in that struggle, just imagine how bad it is for the person that's actually going through it, the long COVID. So I think for the spouses that don't fully understand that it's real, just imagine if the roles were reversed.
Yeah, imagine not being believed.
Imagine not being believed.
It's the most horrible thing that you can physically, emotionally, mentally imagine.
Yeah, it's just...
It's hard. You need the support.
And you need to put yourself in their shoes to
I think empathy and being empathetic is harder than being sympathetic. Because you can sympathize with anybody.
Oh, yeah.
But if you don't know what it's like, that's really hard to be empathetic towards someone. So
yeah.
I think just knowing and being reassured that this is a real deal, this is a real thing, is maybe the first step in that process happening. So
yeah.
Why don't we move on to another question?
Jesus Christ, we've only asked one. I'm so sorry. I'm a rabbit hole talker. A tangent talker.
No, it's all good. So I have one here. Someone says, is recovery even possible?
Yes. We're not bullshitting you.
The answer is yes. I've discussed this on other videos. Doing the right things in, like, there's no, like, right order, but doing the right things long enough. Time itself, I don't believe, is going to fix you or make you heal, but doing the right things throughout that time lets your body heal itself.
Being stubborn enough to be consistent, and
that's how I got through.
Honestly, he's the most stubborn person I know. That's the only reason that you're doing great, because you were gonna beat it. Yeah. You weren't gonna let it win, which is something that you shouldn't. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I have another question here from a spouse, and it says, "I feel like I'm being overbearing. Even when he tells me that he's okay, I don't believe him. How did you and your wife carry on daily life? Was she able to leave you alone, or was she as afraid to walk out the door? As far as, like, you're afraid to leave your spouse when they're struggling this much to go do groceries or whatever,
yeah.
And you're afraid what you're going to come back to." I think that's what they meant. So
I was terrified to leave you alone, especially when you were mentally struggling the most. And unfortunately, I still worked out of the house. You worked at home, and I was working in the public. So not only
which scared me, but
it was terrifying.
Yeah.
I was terrified to come home and possibly bring it home again, causing more sickness.
Some kind of even bigger relapse.
And what else does she ask? I'm sorry.
She feels overbearing.
Oh God, yes, every day. Overbearing because I like she said, she didn't believe him, and sometimes I didn't believe you when you were, honey, I'm fine, you know.
Yeah.
And that, to me, what I relied on in those moments when you would tell me you were fine was your body language. I know that's a weird thing to say, to pick up on body language of your spouse, but that's something that I relied on with you. And I could just see it in your face, honestly.
Yeah.
I really think your positivity, though, your positive attitude is another thing that really, truly got you through this.
Yeah, I've said that before.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the one thing that I have an advantage over others is I am naturally a positive
golden retriever. You really are. You're the golden retriever, and I'm the more dark and, moody one. Luckily,
but that makes a difference in recovery.
It really does.
Because and that's not to say someone who's has more of a tendency to be negative can't recover.
Right.
That's not what I mean at all. But your state of mind is everything, because your mind and your body evolved together.
Yeah.
They are connected. And this is a fine line, because it's not a illness that's just in your brain. It's not like it's made up. That's what I mean by that. But your brain does affect your body, and your body does affect your brain.
100%.
And so, I think being positive and optimistic.
Yeah, that was one of the
makes a
biggest
big
things
difference.
for you, truly. But no, I think for me, I will admit that I didn't believe you for a hot second. But then again, you're not really the person to fake things like this. And I think as the spouse, I can't comprehend not being supportive of you. So I think just for me, it's natural just to want to be there for you. And I think that that's the best thing you can do.
I think it's natural to question.
Yeah.
Because there isn't something that shows from the outside. Doctors are having a hard time. They can't diagnose long COVID.
It's not like a broken
really.
bone.
Yeah, there's nothing from the outside or tests that can say this person has this. So it's natural in our society to go,
Right.
But this is something where you really have to trust the person that you are with, on that they're telling you the truth. And this is millions of people.
Oh yeah, and it's just like me when I struggle mentally. It's one of those things that you can't see my depression, you can't see my anxiety, but you trust me. You know that it's something that I'm not going to fake, because who would?
What's the motive?
What's the benefit of faking these things? There's no benefit to faking them. And I just think that as the partner, the spouse of somebody with long COVID, just being there for them in the worst time of their life, the way that you've been there for me in the worst time of my life, is the best thing that you can do.
So I guess a lot of this video are just some preliminary ideas.
Yeah.
And if there's more questions that other people suffering or spouses or family has on the subject, please throw them down in the comments. But maybe some parting words, like, is there one idea or thought that you can say would give the biggest bang for your buck, as far as from a spouse or partner's standpoint, or is there one thing to keep in mind through this process that would be the most beneficial for all parties involved?
I don't know if, as you say, it sounds so formal, and I really don't know if this answer is going to cut it. The one thing that I held on to the entire time through the thick of it was my best friend. I remember she told you this. Just think of how good it's going to feel when you feel better. And
I remember that too.
I clearly remember that day. She said, I know you feel really shitty right now. Really, I'm sorry. She said, I know you feel really bad right now, but just think of how good you're going to feel when you feel better. And you can apply that to everything. You can apply that as a spouse who is struggling to stay above the water. You can apply that as somebody who is sick, who is struggling to just make it through day to day. But of all the silly things she's ever said to me, that was one of the things that she said that truly stuck with me through all of it. Just imagine how good you're going to feel when you feel better.
I think that's awesome. So like I said, guys, anything that you have questions still, we can definitely do a part 2 and 3 and 4 because my wife loves being on camera so much. But throw them down in the comments. We will address them if we can there. We'll make another video, whatever we got to do. And in the meantime, stick in there. Hope you feel better soon, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye, guys.